my name is Elijah Henderson. This is the Cryptid Studies Institute. I am joined tonight with my co-host,
older sister Gabrielle Henderson, also with Cryptid Studies Institute.
We have a really good one for you tonight. A couple days ago, I reached out to a really good friend of mine, Mr. Jay Bradley, and he runs creepyencounters.com. I believe we're going to have a really good interview for you tonight. Jay, I've known him for a few years now, and we've gone to Land Between the Lakes and investigated together. Heard some interesting things there. And, we've had some really good conversations. Camped out in Montgomery Bell State Park, where home of the infamous Werewolf Springs. We went and hiked through there before.
Was that the night it was about 19 degrees and you slept outside?
It sure was. It was the same night that me and my dad slept out in 2 hammocks, and it hit about 19 degrees. Woke up in the middle of the night, and all sorts of moisture was all over me. I think ice might have been starting to kind of form inside of my little tube tent sort of deal I had set up.
It was so cold that night, the fire barely did any good.
Yes, it was a very uncomfortable night's sleep, and Mr. J. Bradley was there in attendance with us. And, well, Jay, how are you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. A little sore from work today. I mentioned it on a previous video. I've gone into construction again, so very active job. Gab, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing excellent. I'm a little tired from a closet reorganization project, but I am great.
And Jay, you got some interesting stuff for us tonight, don't you?
Yeah, I have some experiences I'd like to share with you guys, and just have at it.
That's awesome, brother. I reckon before we get started tonight, I feel it incumbent upon myself to ask you, Jay, what do you think about this UFO problem we got going on in America right now? Seems like every day on the news somebody's talking about a UFO that was seen somewhere.
Yeah, I haven't paid a lot of attention to it because there's so much information that's not being shared right now. And that's, where I'd stand with it at this point. It's just the government, as usual, are holding back and just not sharing with the public what actually happened, I guess, with the 3 shoot-downs here recently. So all I've done is just sat back and I've just waited to see what other information is going to be brought forth. All we know is they are unidentified flying objects, but of what kind, of what nature, it's unknown at this point.
Now, I didn't even know it was quite 3 shoot-downs so far. I just heard 1 shoot-down and maybe an attempted strike on another. So that's news for me.
Yeah, there were 2 up in Canada, and then a 3rd over Lake Huron. So there have been 3 so far, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, to my knowledge, it wasn't shot down, but I did see a video by a TikTok user who thinks they saw a UFO recently over Tennessee.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, this is an active area in this area that I live in here, near the Smoky Mountains National Park. But, 3 shoot-downs as far as I know. None of the objects have been recovered. They've all fallen in areas that are very difficult to get to. So that's the latest I've heard tonight on the recent news that I just watched a couple hours ago.
Gotcha. Well, I guess we'll have to stay tuned and just see if we're about to go through the movie Signs or if it's going to blow over.
Yeah. I'd rather doubt that they're alien in nature or extraterrestrial.
I agree.
But I wish they were.
Well, Jay, we're going to jump into it, I reckon. And to start with, I'm going to ask you that question that everybody seems to get in a cryptozoology interview, that famous first question. How did you get involved and interested in cryptozoology?
Yeah, I was raised in the state of Iowa, and I saw a UFO, speaking of UFOs, when I was about 10 years old. I lived in Cedar Falls, Iowa at that point, and it was a summer evening. The sun was just going down. I was outside my house and playing with a friend, and I looked off to the north, and a little bit northeast, and I could see a round white object in the sky. It was about the size of the full moon, and it was moving from right to left over the horizon. And it went completely across my field of view from right to left, so it would have been east to west, and then disappeared. And then 2 days later, in our local newspaper, it's called the Cedar Falls Record, there was a little article about a spot out northwest of Cedar Falls where this object would have been traveling at that point. There was a burned mark in a field, circular in nature, and did that cause that burn mark? I don't know, but that was my introduction. Really, that really piqued my curiosity when I saw that object. It wasn't the moon. It wasn't anything I've ever seen before, and that was really my beginning to become really interested in cryptids and the world of the paranormal. Yeah, that was just something that really struck me as very strange, and to this day, I don't know what I saw.
Man, that's interesting. From the burn marks it left, is that like what they describe as crop circle, or was it a little bit different?
Exactly, as I recall, and it was a long time ago, it was circular and about 30 feet in diameter. And back in the day, I mean, that was in the late 60s. You didn't see a lot in the newspaper about those kinds of things, but it really jumped off the page to me, even at 10 years old, that this article popped up in our local newspaper about this burned area, this circular area in a farm field just northwest of Cedar Falls.
And by that time, it was ingrained in you. It stuck with you.
Ever since. Yeah, hooked. I mean, never let it go after that. Because it was just it was such a impactful, type of experience. And I've been looking for these things, and ever since, yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, I think we led in with the right topic of the UFOs in America right now.
I guess we did.
Well, Jay, if you don't mind sharing with me, I remember when I met you, I think in 2019 at Cryptid Con, and it was either Louisville or Lexington, Kentucky.
I believe it was Lexington.
It was Lexington? Okay, we were shooting the breeze around our table where we set up, and you talked about a possible dogman encounter of sorts where you heard a loud roar of some kind. Would you mind sharing that with us?
No, it was back in the spring of 1981, early spring. I ran on the track team at Iowa State University, and we actually had a track meet in Cedar Falls, my hometown, at the University of Northern Iowa. And the track meet got over about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I was going to drive the 2 hours back to Ames, Iowa, where Iowa State is, and then I decided that I was just going to stay there locally and have dinner with my girlfriend, and we decided not to make the drive and go and stay at my parents' house, which is about 10 miles northwest of Cedar Falls, and just spend the night. My parents were out of town at that time, so we got there about 11 o'clock in the evening, and I had the garage door opener, so I knew how to get in the garage, and I knew that there was a key in the garage so I could gain access to the home. And give you an idea of where this home is, again, northwest of Cedar Falls, about 10 miles. Not far from where that burn mark was, now that I think about it.
Oh, nice.
Of that UFO. I never thought about that until now. But anyway, I get to the house. I cannot find the key. So I said, well, let's see if we can jimmy some screens loose in the back of the home and see if we can get in that way. Well, I went to the back. I tried to get some screens loose. I was starting to bend those things up, and I said, no, that's not going to work. So I walked back in the garage, and lights on in the garage. We have a floodlight illuminating the cement out in front of the garage. It goes out about 50 feet. And I'm rifling through some boxes, and all of a sudden I hear a growl behind me. And at first I ignored it. I just thought I imagined it. So I continued to look through the boxes for this key. And then I hear it again. I look over my right shoulder, and I see my girlfriend is looking in the same direction behind me. And I said, did you hear that? She goes, yeah, I did. And then it growls again. But this is a deep, guttural growl. This is probably 50 or 60 feet away from us. And I thought, well, maybe this is just a neighbor's dog has come over to hassle us here tonight. And, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm 20 years old. I think I can whip the world, right? And I grab a claw hammer that's sitting in the box next to me. So I start to walk out onto the driveway and towards this thing that's growling at me. Now, I can't see it, but I can hear it. I start to walk towards it, just right on the edge where the light starts to disappear in the darkness. At that point, the driveway hooks up and to the left. It goes up about 70 feet onto the main road. And there's a little horse barn up on the right. So I decide to walk up this part of the driveway. As I start to walk up the driveway, this thing starts to follow me. Again, growling very deeply, menacingly, and just that guttural growl. So I walked up to the horse barn and I stopped as I was losing the light at that point. And I turned around and faced it. And it growled even deeper. Well, I took that claw hammer in my left hand and I walked towards this thing. I raised it up and I said, "Come on, you." I won't use the words. You can imagine what I said. As I walked towards this thing, all of a sudden, it gave off a roar. It kind of reminded me of a lion that you would see on any show, about the Serengeti. It was a roar. But as I approached it and it did this, whatever this thing was taller than I was. I am 6'4". So this roar is coming at me from probably 8 feet off the ground. It's like it happened yesterday, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I whipped to my right, and I saw my girlfriend standing over by the car, and I could see her eyes were like bugging out of her head. And she was looking out in front of me. And I just said, "Get in the car right now." And then I knew at this point I was dealing with something that I couldn't take. There's no way. I didn't have any idea what I was dealing with. So I started to walk down the driveway, sidestepping, still facing it. As I continued to sidestep down the driveway, it paralleled me again, growling that menacing growl. I eased around to the driver's side of the car. I still faced it. Opened that car door. I slid into the driver's seat. I left the garage door open, lights on, fired up the car, made that little U-turn. And I was hoping as I left that the lights from the car would at least help me illuminate whatever this thing was. And it didn't. And we bugged out of there, staying in a small motel in Cedar Falls that night. And then I came back that next morning, shut off the lights, and closed the garage. But the entire night after that, we kept saying, "What just happened?"
I imagine
I never
so.
saw it. I didn't smell anything. With these cryptids like dogmen, for example, Bigfoot, you might get an odor associated with it. It was all just auditory, and the sound that it made reminded me something that was canid. That's what struck me. It just seemed like I was dealing with a dog, but a dog that's 8 feet tall. Back in the day, I didn't have any idea what this was until the Beast of Bray Road in the early 90s. This information started to come out, and I thought, well, maybe it was something like that. But, that was the experience. It's absolutely frightening. Today, I would have gone back, looked for tracks, gotten impressions and the whole 9 yards. But back then, at 20 years old and having that experience, I didn't know what it was. I just knew we both had encountered something very strange.
Now, did you ever have anything else happen of note at that property?
Never.
Never anything else?
I never did. And years later, I found it from my mother just to the left of that small horse barn I was telling you about. She would till a little garden in there. And she always used to find arrowheads and other Indian artifacts when she would till that ground.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting, and I failed to mention where this home is located. It's only about a quarter mile from the west branch of the Cedar River. You just went down behind our parents' house, straight down a hill, and there's the West Fork, or the west branch of the Cedar River. And I know a lot of these, cryptids and dogmen especially, many of these sightings occur along rivers. So, that's what happened back in the day.
Oh, wow, man.
Yeah.
Now the nature of the roar when you heard it, was it one of those you could kind of feel rattling in your chest? Because it was when we were little, we had something roar and howl at a place called Werewolf Springs, which we mentioned a little while ago, and you could feel it. It would shake and rattle in your chest. It vibrated when it did that.
In that particular case, it did not. I did not feel that characteristic sympathetic resonance, that some people feel when they encounter these things. It was just so loud. I didn't feel that, but it absolutely stopped me dead in my tracks. It scared me to death. Even today, as I talk about it, the hairs raise up on my forearms, and it's been a long time.
How close would you estimate it was, just judging by the sound?
Yeah, at the time that it did that, I would guess probably 15 feet away. It's just right on the edge of darkness, and I could not see it. I remember looking up at where this sound was coming from, and it was just darkness in front of me. I saw nothing.
Probably just right in the shadows, out of eyesight then.
It was. I just didn't catch a glimpse of anything.
And that darkness made it all the more terrifying, I'm sure.
Oh, it was just, it's a life-changing experience. It really was. And of course, I'm an outdoorsman. I hunt, I fish, I'm a fishing guide. And, it changes you, even when you go out and you hunt and fish in the darkness today, because there's things that are out there, whatever they may be.
Did it take you a while to get back in the woods, or was it,
It did not. I think I just wrote it off as kind of a one-off and a big question mark. But it was always in the back of my mind, is there another one out there? Or is this just going to be a one-time experience in my life? I'll never encounter anything like this again. I'm just going to move on. Of course, I never dropped it after that, because I've had other, strange things occur, which encouraged me to continue to look into these things. But you always think about it when you're out there hunting and fishing and spending time in the dark in the woods.
Given the kind of things that we do, we cross our fingers for each other now that somebody will have that experience in these.
Oh, absolutely. I know. Today I wish I'd had it again. Would I have responded the same way? Probably. I'd have more equipment with me, though, I would hope, at that time. I wish I could have seen it and illuminated it, but it is what it is.
And you said it had kind of a sound of like a lion roaring on the Serengeti, right?
It did. It was that loud. It roared. That's what just struck me. It was a roar.
He's like a grandpa to me. For those that have seen it, our video on the braying beast of Indian Mound, the gentleman up there, Lewis, he described to me once, he had a close friend in the country music scene, and he was out visiting him on his property one evening, and we actually did a video on that gentleman's property toward the beginning of our channel. But they were outside shooting the breeze, and he described a very deep guttural growl there, and he said it sounded just like a lion growling, and he didn't know what else it could be. He always described it to us. It sounded just like a deep lion's growl out in the woods, and that place had I think it was a fairly aggressive Bigfoot. Now, I don't know if there's anything that still goes on down there, because that person has sold the property and moved away, but for a while it was somewhat of a hot spot.
Yeah, it's interesting that this other person mentioned that it sounded a lot like a lion, or similar to that.
And I think that's probably one of the things that got him believing in Bigfoot, because of just the unusual nature of it.
Well, it may have been a Bigfoot. I don't know what it was, other than it was terrifying.
Absolutely. Jay, you also have been sharing some information with me about a current research area of yours and some interesting videos and footage that you captured. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, if we've ever heard of the hitchhiker effect, which a lot of us have, I think this may be associated with it. I'll try to keep this short. Back in 2018 in July, my brother and niece and I decided to go on a paranormal roadshow, if you will.
That's awesome.
And we spent 3 weeks. We went to 3 hotspot areas out in the western part of the United States. We went to the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. We went up to the Mount Adams area up in Washington. Went to James Gilliland's ranch up there at East Eddy Ranch and spent some time in that area. And then we concluded our trip by going to the Uinta Basin there in northeast Utah, and we did some investigations around Skinwalker Ranch. And I went with the thought that if I see one weird thing in the sky, one strange light, I'm good. But in all three locations, we had experiences, and even I caught some things on video in all three of those places. 13 months later, I'm up in Wisconsin with my wife fishing. Actually, the date was August the 12th, 2019. Now, mind you, I've been fishing on the Chippewa River for almost 40 years, and this is why we go up there to fish for 4 weeks out of the year. And on that date, on August the 12th, 2019, we were fishing a spot I've fished probably hundreds of times. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Skies are a little bit cloudy. We're anchored about 30 yards off the eastern bank of the Chippewa River. And all of a sudden, I hear these huge branches starting to break and crash. And it sounds like something is running towards us from this spot on the river. And immediately, I was frightened. Again, I'm an outdoorsman. I'm a fishing guide. That's what I do now. And I had never heard anything like this in my life. My sense was that there was something large running towards us and breaking branches in the process. This probably took about 5 seconds and then went completely silent. And I turned to my wife and I said, I have never heard anything like that in my life in the outdoors. So I grabbed my iPhone 7 Plus and I started to film that area where we heard this crashing sound. And I could see little white objects appearing along the edge of the riverbank while I was filming. I wasn't sure what they were. In fact, I commented while I was filming that maybe it was a buck, a big buck over there. He's got his rack. He's tearing stuff up. He's, making some rubs, and that's what I'm hearing. But it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I failed to mention, after that crashing sound stopped, I heard a wild turkey make a distress call in that same spot. So I thought, well, maybe some sort of a predator attacked that wild turkey. So the video is only a minute, 25 seconds long. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go over there and find out what's going on, which did not make her very happy at all. Of course, she knows me. So the water's only about 3 feet deep, so I just grabbed a walking stick and brought my iPhone with me. And I hopped out, and then I waded over and then walked over to that area where I'd heard all this crashing noise and then the sound of that wild turkey in distress. And when I got in that spot, and I measured this later, there was an area, there's a little glade back there. It's not very big, but it's an opening. And there was a spot that was 6 feet by 8 foot. It's almost circular in its design. Completely flattened down. All the ferns were completely flattened down, and there were wild turkey feathers just scattered all over that spot. Tail feathers, saw some primary feathers from the wings, some breast feathers, some from the back. And then probably about 10 feet upstream from that, back in the cover, there was a secondary spot, probably about half that size, flattened down with more turkey feathers. So I decided to go ahead and walk out and just kind of do a perimeter check to see what was over there. But I also want to mention that there was no blood in either one of those locations and no turkey. So I walked the area. I didn't see anything else. I will have to offer that I was a little bit, a little concerned because I wasn't sure what it was. It takes a sizable predator to grab I'm assuming, a large turkey. An adult turkey. I did not see it, though. I will say I did not see the turkey attacked. It was all just based on the sound. And then came back to the boat, and we fished the rest of the day. And that night, when I got back to the cabin, I sat down and decided to look at the footage, and all of a sudden realized that I could see some luminous objects in this footage that were on the edge of the river. Some of them were very small, silver in color, moving at very high speed. And a couple of these almost look like what I refer to as a living, luminous liquid that would kind of crawl through the vegetation in that spot. So when I got back to my home here in East Tennessee, I pulled the footage up, and I have now created, almost 4 years later, what I call the Chippewa River Encounter. I've got several versions of it, but I've zoomed in to get a better look at this luminous material and these luminous objects. And based on what I have seen in this video, I believe some kind of luminous objects or this living luminous liquid, whatever that may be, appears to have attacked a wild turkey in that spot, as crazy as that sounds.
That's interesting.
Yes, I mean, out of all the videos that I've put on Creepy Encounters, I would be very open to anybody debunking any of those. But I tell you what, I just feel that this video is the real deal. I cannot debunk it myself. I've looked at it dozens of times, and it's just very strange. I don't know what I caught on camera, but I've continued to go back there ever since, and I've set up static cameras in that spot, hoping I could catch these objects again. And I set up 3 cameras when I go back, and I've caught some very interesting things on camera in the past 3 years that I've been doing this in this one small glade on the Chippewa River.
And I guess it's important for me to ask this. All these videos you're talking about, are they available on Creepy Encounters so people can go and watch them?
They are. Just go to creepyencounters.com, go to my Caught on Camera page, and I guess right now I have about 45 videos up there.
So everybody,
a lot of these objects that you're going to see are going to be very small. Now, I will offer that I'm an entomologist, so I have a degree in bugs, okay, from Iowa State University. And a number of these things do look like insects, but they just behave differently than any insect I've ever been associated with. Some of these objects fly into the ground without ever decelerating. Now, some of these may be misidentified by myself, artifacts of the camera, and I'm always open to people debunking my videos, and I'm welcome to critical analysis anytime, and I'm happy to take them down. I wish more people would look at these with a critical eye and share their thoughts with me. But there have been many instances where there have been things that just, they're luminous, they fly into the ground, they don't even appear to decelerate, which to me defies the laws of physics. There have been several videos I've made of segments of light. That's the only way I can say or characterize them as, just segments of light moving off into the distance. I've got one that actually crosses back and forth across the Chippewa River, and one that comes from the west side towards the camera actually has an acoustic signature associated with it. It actually makes a sound.
Oh, wow.
It just crazy stuff. It really is. And so I've got those videos there at creepyencounters.com, but the one I would direct people to as far as the Chippewa River encounter is one where I zoomed in and I slowed down the footage, and it's called the Chippewa River Encounter Edit Number 2.
Edit number 2.
Edit number 2. The original footage, it's very hard to see. You've got to zoom in, and these things are happening very quickly, but they are indeed there.
So everybody that's heard that, make sure you go to creepyencounters.com and check those videos out. When I met you in 2019, you actually showed me that video you were talking about, and it's very fascinating.
About what time of year would you say this happened?
What's that, Gabby? I'm sorry.
About what type of year and what type of weather would you say it was when you had this encounter?
That was August the 12th. That was 2019. And it was a beautiful summer day. There was cloud cover. I remember that. I can see that from the video. There was no wind at the time, so it was very quiet. But as we know, we always hear about the Oz effect with these things. What was fascinating is after this crashing sound occurred, and then that turkey made that distress call, everything went dead quiet all around the boat. It was like we were enveloped in something that prevented any sound from being produced around us. It was very strange. I've had that happen a couple other times in the outdoors, and that's what happened right after that that attack, if you want to call it, occurred by those luminous objects.
That's very interesting. Are you familiar with the works of David Paulides, his research?
Oh, absolutely. Missing 411.
Missing 411. He did a documentary called Missing 411 The Hunted, and I don't know if this would kind of fall into the same category as what you've seen and filmed and whatnot.
Well, I don't know why it wouldn't be, because again, I did not see these objects actually attack. The evidence would suggest that's what happened, because where these were seen is where I found the two depressions, or the areas where the vegetation was flattened down and where the turkey feathers were, which makes me always wonder if whatever this was or whatever they are could do that, why couldn't they attack a human being?
Oh, almost would have to be able to.
Mm-hmm.
There was something on that documentary. I think it was a woman from the point of view of a tree stand. She said that she seen something almost like a blob in the trees, and I think it was kind of glittery and shimmery, but it would kind of reach and move from tree to tree, but it almost like a gelatinous blob of sorts. But I want to say it was mostly clear. And since you described it as luminous liquid orb, is that correct?
I call it living luminous liquid. When you see that Chippewa River encounter edit number 2, you will see this material kind of sliding through the ground cover, and there's one place, I call it the periscope. There's one spot to the left of a dark tree, I think it's an oak tree, to the left, where there's a circular section that I call the periscope. On 2 occasions in this video, you will see a light enter this circular area and make a turn, spin around, and then leave it again. And then just to the right of that, I call it the living luminous mass. Some of these small objects would actually go into this living luminous mass, and you see this boiling effect, like a blob that you mentioned, Elijah. Very much like that. Now, is that the turkey actually back in there being attacked? And, you know, the primary feathers on the end of a turkey wing have that white alternating with the brown. Was that it actually laying on the ground in the process, you know, during the attack itself? I don't think that's it. When you look at it, it looks like it is, as you refer to, as a blob that's kind of just boiling, if you will, but it's luminous at the same time.
Have you ever done any history on like the background of the area? If there was ever anything like the Native Americans living in the area, or anything of a particular interest that might kind of help shed some light on what's going on down there?
Yeah, well, that's my next project. In fact, I'm trying to pull some literature together now just to learn more about the Native American presence in that area. Had a gentleman a couple weeks ago from that area. He's a native and lives in northern Wisconsin. He'd seen one of my videos. It's called Fern Beam. I put it out about 3 weeks ago, where this segment of light actually just leaves the ground over the ferns. And it's not a spider web, by the way. I don't know what it is, but he saw the video, and he said that he's very familiar with the legends and folklore in northern Wisconsin and Michigan about the little people. And he's watched a lot of my videos, and he says that, I believe, is what you are seeing. He said, in fact, he said, and I quote, "We're really not supposed to be seeing these types of things, but for some reason you've been able to catch these on video." So are they the little people? I don't know. But to answer your question, yes, that piqued my curiosity. I'm going to learn more about Native American history in that particular area in northwest Wisconsin. That's my next project.
That's awesome, Jay. And I guess about how often would you say you have things go on out there? Is it like over the span of weeks, months, years?
I go for 4 weeks, and then I motor upstream. I have a jet boat, so I can go through very shallow water to get to the spot. And then I set cameras out all day long. So I end up with about 150 hours of footage from those 3 cameras when I'm up there in the summer, and then I go back in the fall for 2 weeks. And then when I get back home, I spend the next several weeks, when I have the time, staring at the video.
Oh, that's the boring part.
Oh my gosh. And you'll go hours and not see anything, and all of a sudden something will appear, or you hear a weird sound. These things happen very quickly. And that's what I end up doing most of the time in the fall. Again, I'm a fishing guide, so the fishing slows down in the late fall and winter. So I spend a lot of time just reviewing footage and then deciding what I think is worthy of putting out on creepyencounters.com. That's what I do. But yeah, you'll go hours and not see anything, and all of a sudden things will appear very quickly over the period maybe of 15, 20 minutes, and then they disappear again. There's just no rhyme or reason to it. Yeah, it seems to, and a lot of what I see are just kind of one-offs. I never see them again.
Oh,
and something
wow.
else manifests totally different and never see it again.
And has anything ever showed up that make you think maybe there's a Bigfoot in the area, or maybe not?
No. And what's strange about this spot, as long as I've had these cameras out, I've never seen a white-tailed deer in this spot. I've seen a couple of bears. I see very little wildlife, and I don't know why in this particular place. It's like it's a glade right on the edge of the river, and I see very few songbirds. I've never seen a turkey ever in this spot. I mean, there's a lot of wild turkeys in northwest Wisconsin. Is this an area that they avoid for some good reason? Possibly. To answer your question, no, I have never seen a Bigfoot there. I've never had any experience like that other than what happened possibly there back in 1981 in Iowa. I'd love to, but I have never had any Bigfoot experience to my knowledge.
Well, we plan to go up to Land Between the Lakes in a couple of weeks, so maybe our luck will take off there.
Oh, I hope so. It'd be a blast. I hope so. I've always found out with these things, it seems like if I'm looking for them, I never find them. It's when I'm relaxed and not paying any attention is when they seem to show up.
I find most of our best encounters have occurred when we're just sitting around the fire shooting the breeze.
Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. That's when they occurred. Yeah, so there's something to that. It's hard to wrap your mind around, but when I go out and do my investigations, I don't go with really many expectations other than I'm going to enjoy the outdoors, and we'll see what develops from there.
More often than not, it proves to be a good camping trip, and very rarely does anything ever happen.
I know in this particular case what happened in Wisconsin, I certainly wasn't looking for it. I've been up there for 40 years, never had any kind of, quote, paranormal experience out there until that day. But I believe it had something to do with my trip out west. I really do. I think that the hitchhiker effect may be in play here. And, 13 months later, why would this all of a sudden occur in that remote spot and present itself? Well, I just don't find that to be a mere coincidence. It's not that I'm special, believe me. It's just that I think there's something about your intention, and when you're exposed to these things, I think some sort of kind of a contagion may end up following you, when you start paying attention to these things. And every once in a while, it'll start to present itself to you. And merely speculating, but that might be part of the hitchhiker effect that we experienced up there in Wisconsin.
Well, I certainly do agree that certain things can come home with you, follow you back home.
Yeah, when I went out west and came back home for a few days, we had some things happen around the house. Loud bangs would occur. And then a few occasions we get up in the morning and a chair would be moved, away from the kitchen table, be moved out in the middle of the living room, things like that, which did not make my wife very happy.
No.
Yeah, and we call these things hooky, the paranormal. Yeah. And she goes, there you are. There you're out there poking the hooky again. But, yeah, and then it would just slowly subside and go away, and then never anything would happen again after that. But these things do occur when you start to investigate them. You can bring them home.
That's sort of how things have been on our end. I mean, we don't do any, for those listening, we don't do any kind of
paranormal investigation, so to speak.
But, every now and then something will just happen over here. Like for example, it was a much earlier video, but me and my dad we live surrounded by woods down here. And we were off in our woods by a shack that we made, recording one of our scripts. We were recording the video script for Granny Witches of Appalachia and about a haunted apartment. And during the recording of, I think it was the apartment, we accidentally caught an EVP in the recording. Don't know why. It just randomly showed up. And sometimes we'll have lights come on by themselves, seemingly by themselves, and no real explanation. And every now and then a weird noise, but like you said, it'll happen and then just
Nothing.
it'll subside.
Interestingly enough, when he was filming the one about the apartment, he heard some kind of noise he assumed was birds, and he thought it was birds. And if you listen to the EVP, it sounds like whatever the thing is saying, "We're not birds."
Yeah, it's creepy. I mean, I'm down there and I hear this, and I was like, "Did you hear that, Dad?" And he said, "It's probably just birds." But I think it might have been even preceding us talking. A voice that's completely different from him or I said, "We're not birds," and it's creepy.
It is creepy, and you reminded me of something you asked about a Bigfoot experience. I had every once in a while when I've set these cameras up and I'm just reviewing the footage, I will hear a single word. And one day when I was listening to it, I swear the sound came from just one of these static cameras that said Yeti. And it sounded like a whisper, and I shared it with my son and my wife. I said, "What are you hearing?" Of course, this could be, auditory pareidolia, okay? But they said, "Yeah, it does sound like it said Yeti." So that's my only Yeti experience, if that's what we heard. But I've got it recorded. I thought about putting it out there and let people listening to it. But they might hear, many, many different things. But that's another thing. Every once in a while, I'll hear it just sounds a voice. It'll be certainly different than mine. There's nobody at the site, and it will be just one word said and gone.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe I asked this, but do you know of any military bases close to the Chippewa River?
None in that area in Rusk and Chippewa County. I do not.
Nothing like that.
Not up there, not to my knowledge.
Very interesting.
Yeah, this is up in northwest Wisconsin. It's about 40 miles northeast of Eau Claire and Chippewa Falls, in that area. It's up in the North Woods.
Some of these things you almost just have to take like a checklist, and it's like Indians in the area? Nope. No native military bases? Nope.
Yeah, you really do, to try to pull that information together to see these trends, these things that seem to be in common that occur at these hot spots. Yeah, and a lot of those things you tick off and go, yeah, a lot of these hot spots share these same things.
Absolutely. Jay, we're going to branch into a little bit of a different direction here. Mm-hmm. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your time up around the Skinwalker Ranch? That's been a big topic of conversation recently. One or multiple TV shows about Skinwalker Ranch. Everybody seems to be interested in Skinwalker Ranch, and it probably will surprise people. I know very little about the Skinwalker Ranch, and right. I'm a little disappointed in myself about that.
Well, yeah, it's a paranormal Disneyland. I had heard about it back in probably about 10 years ago. George Knapp and Colin Kelleher had written that book about all the strange happenings there on the ranch, that 410-acre property there in northeast Utah. So we made it that third stop on our paranormal road trip. And so what we decided to do, my brother and I were together then, that we were going to go ahead and just spend a few hours it's on a public road just south of the entrance to Skinwalker Ranch. There's a little spot where I think it's called 4000E and 6500S. I might have them reversed, where people sit there and the ranch is straight north of you. And in fact, the gates to the ranch are straight north of where this spot is. And the first evening we were there, sun's going down, and there are thunderstorms in the area. Can you imagine that?
That's
Spooky
awesome.
Night. And it was about 9 o'clock, and we rolled the windows down in the car, driver and passenger side, just so we could get a better view of the ranch, which is straight north of us. My brother was on the passenger side of the vehicle, looking north. And I have a dash cam in my vehicle that's been made to, collect night vision. It's enhanced to do that, and I had that thing running. And the wind is probably sustained at about 30 miles an hour. That's how strong the wind is, and it's roaring through the vehicle. And all of a sudden, I see something appear. It looked like it appeared over the hood of my car. I have the lights off. Brother's looking north, and it looks blue to me. It's there for just a split second. It looked like it was about 2 foot tall, 2 foot wide. It was an amorphous blue object appeared, and then it disappeared very quickly. Now, my brother was near the dash cam, so I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, hit that event button and catch that. And he didn't even know what I was talking about. I said, I think I saw something. So he hit the event button, and then when I got home 3 weeks later, I looked at the footage, and something very strange emerged in that very same spot where this blue image appeared. Now, in the video, it doesn't look blue. It looks kind of magenta in color, violet in color, but you see it appear for just a 2 or 3/10 of a second, right-hand side, passenger side of the windshield, and then disappear. Now, again, I've got about 1 minute and 10 seconds worth of video on this. But prior to that, if you look earlier on in the video, you are going to see some violet-colored flashes also move across the windshield of the car. I can't tell you if they are inside or outside. I did not see those at all. But they're the same color as this violet-colored image that appeared. A lot of people have looked at it. You've seen it, Elijah.
I have. It's very interesting.
And people tell me it looks like an alien face. Again, that might be pareidolia kicking in. I get that, but it's very odd.
I showed Gabby before we did this interview, and I was like, look at that. You see, it looks like an alien nose and eye.
It was very unique. It almost reminded me of a lightning flash, but it wasn't. It was like light appearing, and there was definitely something face-like that appears in it. It almost had a very eeriness to it.
Yeah, and if it's a reflection on the inside of the vehicle, it is not from any phone or notebook or anything electronic. We didn't have anything on like that at the time. My brother, I remember distinctly, he was facing to the right, looking out the window towards the ranch. So there was nothing in the vehicle that could have caused that reflection, if that's what it was. I don't know what caused that. Whatever this blue thing I saw, I thought it was outside. Maybe it was actually inside the vehicle and caused that reflection. But it is not from a device we had in the car. I don't know what it is.
Sounds to me like it's whatever's over at the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I scratch my head to this day as to what that is. If it's a reflection, I don't know what it is a reflection of. Yeah, I've got that video out there too. It's called Skinwalker Anomalies Caught on Dash Cam.
Everybody check that one out. That is a very unique and interesting video.
And I encourage people to listen to the one that just I don't narrate it at all. I think the one that's narrated, it's great to see because I point things out with arrows where things are appearing very quickly. But when you listen to the raw footage, you're going to hear nothing but a roaring sound. And that is the wind roaring through this car of mine.
Wow.
It's so loud. And you can hear my brother and I talking back and forth. It just gives you a sense of kind of what the setting was like that night, how eerie it was, and these things appearing on that dash cam.
And
Skinwalker Anomaly Caught on Dash Cam.
And you've recorded quite a bit of like strange lights around Skinwalker Ranch, correct?
You know what? More of the lights I've recorded were down the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. That's that Alpine Valley down there. That's called the Mysterious Valley, by the way.
The Mysterious Valley.
Very mysterious.
And did it come across as like a paranormal hotspot to you?
Oh, it is. I've read several books. A man by the name of Christopher O'Brien has read many books about the San Luis Valley. And he piqued my curiosity, and that's why we went there originally. So that's where I have a lot of these videos and these kind of strange lights. That's the only one I have. That's not true. I have another one there at Skinwalker. I had a Best Carter camera, and it's grainy. It's hard to see. I was shooting the entrance area from that public road, and you see a red light move up through the field of view. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's an artifact of the camera there near the entrance of Skinwalker Ranch. I pointed out with a red arrow, but it's kind of difficult to see. Those are the only lights I saw there. Other than this, 2 nights later, my brother and I were sitting in that same spot, and I was looking straight ahead towards the west, and it was again about the same time, and my brother tapped me on my shoulder. He said, "Look at that." And I looked north towards Skinwalker Ranch, and there's a mesa directly north of Skinwalker Ranch. They call it Skinwalker Ridge. And there was an orange object in the sky about 30 degrees above Skinwalker Ridge, probably half the size of the full moon, circular with a white center.
Circular with a white center.
It was orange with a white center. So circular, orange, white center. It was there for like 5 seconds and then just faded away.
Oh, wow.
Yes, those are the only 2, I guess, in addition to that red-colored object I caught on video, that were lights that I saw at Skinwalker Ranch. But I didn't get that on video. I didn't have time. But I've never seen anything like that before.
Completely unique to anything you've ever seen down there.
Never. And I'm a hunter. I'm a duck hunter. I'm out there early in the morning, an hour and a half before it gets light. And after the sun goes down, I've spent thousands of hours looking into skies with all types of planets and stars and things that, raise those question marks. But I have never seen anything like that, ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was my Skinwalker experience there at the ranch, and those things that we caught on video. And I had one other thing occur. My brother and I decided to go north of there, up to the Ashley National Forest. It's on the reservation up there. You have to get permits to go and hike up there. We went up to a place called Big Springs. It's a beautiful place with beautiful ponds, and there's a trout hatchery up there. And we decided to walk into Ashley National Forest, and we're actually in the Uinta Valley. We have mountains on either side of us, the west side and east side. So we're in this small valley walking north, and got to be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The clouds started to roll in, and we decided to walk back to our vehicle. We had about a mile to get back, and probably about halfway back, and all of a sudden, here we go again, Elijah and Gabby. We hear a growl to our left. Now, it's light outside. It's like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and my brother looks at me, and our eyes bugged out of our heads. Now, this growl was different. It sounded more like a moan combined with a growl. I've never heard anything like this before. And my brother points and says, with his point, if you will, we're going to go in and circle this thing. And as we start to move, it does this one time. And as we start to move and try to fan out and circle whatever this is, but it's about 20 yards away from us. We've got small pine trees between us and where this sound is coming from. It growls a third time, okay? 3 of these sounds. And we both went and did a little perimeter and came back into the spot where we heard this, and we found nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. And my brother is a skeptic, and that's why I love having him along, because I need people like that with me. And he said, I don't know what that was, but he certainly heard it. And again, a lot of these things seem to happen in threes sometimes when it comes to the paranormal. So it made me wonder about the 3 growls. But yeah, so those were the things that happened with our trip there to the Skinwalker Ranch and our investigations around the Uinta Basin.
Well, that's great, man. And you think we're going to get anything in a couple of weeks at LBO? Where are we going to go, Jay?
I know. I'm leaving that up to you. You are the expert when it comes to the LBL.
I don't know about that, but
I think I know where we're going, but I'm not going to share that at this point.
Probably the same place we went last time.
Absolutely. I think that's ground zero, don't you?
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm hoping so that it's early enough in the year that the cottonmouths won't
Yeah,
be
no
back
more
down there.
snakes.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. Hopefully, we have a cold front. Not too cold, but keep the snakes from moving around. I agree.
Absolutely, because where we're referencing, we went down there in the summertime, me and the folks, and there was about 5 or 6 cottonmouth snakes down there, and it was terrible.
Needless to say, we packed up and left. Our
Yes.
mom was not a snake person.
I can understand.
My mom was always pro Bigfoot or Dogman, but she drew the line at snakes, and frankly, I don't really blame her. I hate a snake too.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either.
Well, Jay, we've reached almost the 1 hour time,
Okay.
and I reckon we'll start to wrap this up. So, in conclusion, do you got any final words to tell this audience before we close it up?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for having me on your show, and yeah, just stay tuned. I'm continuing to do these investigations. In fact, I'm a fishing guide, and I guide here in East Tennessee. And this year, I'm going up to Wisconsin for the first time. I'm going to guide up there for 6 months, and so I'm going to have more time to access this location and put up more cameras. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. Everybody, please go and check out Jay's work. And, Gab, do you got any final comments?
Thank you so much, Jay, for sharing that with us. It's all very interesting stuff, and we thank you for being on, and we hope you have a lot of good activity and a lot of good footage when you go to Wisconsin later this year.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to seeing you here in another week or so.
I look forward to it also.
And I guess final words from me. Jay, thank you so much for being on, brother. It was a pleasure to talk to you again. And I look very much forward to hanging out with you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Look forward to it, guys.
Alrighty, well, everybody out listening out there, you have a great evening, and stay tuned for more.